Welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a hypothetical scenario and see how the error budget policy thresholds we saw in the last video might apply. As a refresher, here are the thresholds one more time. To demonstrate this policy in action, let's walk through a scenario that ends up all the way at threshold 4, the executive leadership escalation. Ouch! Ready? Okay, so here's the background on this scenario. Let's say the service in question has a 3 nines availability target, but a bug makes it into production, and it begins serving errors at 0.15% of the time, reducing availability to 99.85%. At 1.5 times the error budget, this is quite a slow burn, so it doesn't trigger any page-level alerts, and the SRE team is not notified of the regression until almost 5 days after the fact when a week's worth of error budget has been exhausted. Remember that automatic bug that gets created? It's a good thing we have that. At this point, the first threshold of our policy has been crossed, and the SRE team starts investigating. After a couple of days of investigation, the SRE team finds some correlations with increased CPU usage and escalates to the development team. We've now crossed the second threshold as the SRE team has determined they need additional help from the dev team. At this point, it's now impractical to roll back nearly 2 weeks of daily releases to the service, so when the 30-day error budget is exhausted after another 4 days of mostly fruitless investigation by the SRE and dev on calls, SRE stops new feature releases for the service and escalates for more developer engagement with the problem. Cue the third threshold. Engineering management agrees to assemble a task force of 2 senior developers and an SRE to dig into the problem more deeply. With no good correlation between code changes and the regression, they start doing in-depth performance profiling and remove more bottlenecks. All the fixes are aggregated into a weekly patch on top of the current production release. The efficiency of the service increases noticeably, but it still serves an elevated rate of errors. After another 6 weeks or so, the service is still unreliable, but the task force has reached the conclusion that the performance regression was a red herring. At this point, we burned a whole lot of error budget, enough to trigger the fourth threshold. Executive leadership convenes and calls out code yellow, mandating that members of the development team stop work on their usual projects and join a coordinated effort to resolve the problem. They do a deep dive and soon find some architectural problems. With all members of the dev team on board, they eventually are able to re-implement some features which close out an edge case interaction between the server and the client. The features are pushed to production and voila! Error rates revert to their previous state, and SRE is able to verify that we are no longer burning our error budget at an elevated rate. So there we go. It's not likely you'll find yourself in a situation this sticky all too often, but hopefully you can see how the error budget policy was able to provide a clear path to action for the teams involved and enable them to get back to their reliability target. Without a well-formulated error budget policy, teams can spend precious time pointing fingers at each other instead of fixing the problem. An error budget policy won't solve your reliability issues on its own, but it will help your teams communicate and coordinate more effectively when problems occur. If you enjoyed the scenario, you can find more of them along with the full text of the error budget policy on the CRE Life Lessons blog. Just search for that term or find a link to it in the resources section. Now, let's try out one more scenario on your own as an exercise.